PowerPlayChess, brought to you in association with Kagi.
Hello and welcome back to round 9 of the Women's Candidates tournament. In this round we had only one decisive result, and it was the game between Vaishali Rameshbabu and Tan Zhongyi. It was a very short game, only lasting 21 moves, so we will take a look at it quickly in this video. In the first half of the Candidates tournament, Zhongyi defeated Vaishali in a nice attacking game with a Jobava London. But let's see what happens this time with colors reversed. Vaishali goes e4, to which Zhongyi replies c5, so we finally see a Sicilian. Usually this leads to more dynamic lines, but Vaishali chooses a very calm and solid line against it with c3, which is called the Alpin variation. Black has many options here, for example, d5 challenging the center, knight f6 attacking the pawn, but in the game she chooses e6, which is a little bit less common, but still exists. Vaishali goes d4, attacking the center, and black does the same with d5. A set of pawns gets traded on d5 and knight to f3, so these are very common pawn structures so far. But Zhongyi plays more of a rare line here with a6. Usually, it is more popular for black to develop either one of the knights first, for example, knight to c6, after which bishop b5, bishop d6, and white can take the pawn on c5, and we would get an isolated queen-pawn type of structure. Also knight f6, if you want to defend against this bishop check with the bishop instead. So these are all very common, but a6 is more rare, but it makes sense because we saw that bishop b5 was a move in all of these main lines, so that's what it prevents and maybe puts white out of their preparation a bit more. The bishop develops itself on d3 instead, and black decides to close the position now with c4. Bishop goes away, and we see very natural development over the next couple of moves. This was the first time that Vaishali started thinking during the game, so might have been prepared or knew the positions approximately up until here. So now she goes for b3, which is one of the main plans in this position. It is just essentially breaking black's pawn structure a bit more. Black takes. Of course, the a pawn is going to take to keep the pawns connected, and castles. At first, I really liked what Vaishali did next. She started putting her pieces in very attacking positions from now on, but as we will see, it was not that simple. So she goes knight to g5, attacking the h7 pawn, and it looks great. It looks like white is going to be the one who is starting the attack. Now, I'm not sure what exactly her idea was after h6, but there are some interesting lines here, like knight to h7 and queen to h5, with some potential bishop takes h6 ideas. But in the game, Zhongyi defended with the g6 pawn instead. It looks a bit weakening on the dark squares, but it would take some time for white to actually find a way to use them. So she goes queen to f3, activating yet another piece. And Vaishali is a very dynamic player, but so is Zhongyi. She also calculates these ideas really well, as we saw from this tournament. So she goes queen to c7, attacking on h2, and white defends that pawn by counterattacking once again with h4, threatening h5 in the future. Black here keeps her composure and plays knight b to c6, so just completing development and not being scared of the attack that can start here on the king side. At this point, h5 is not exactly possible because there's this knight to d4 tactic, taking the bishop on c2. So white had to solve that issue and goes bishop to a3, so also attacking that bishop on d6. Black goes king g7, taking some of these weak dark squares under control. White goes rook to e1, just completing development for now, and now black goes h5. This is a very good defensive move in these positions. it could have even been played earlier once white played h4 themselves. And even though white's pieces looked very active, the position is actually not that great. Black's position is very solid, all of the pieces are working well together, and their development is a bit more clear. There's bishop to g4 next, causing some problems for the queen. Here, white should have played bishop to d6, queen takes, and knight to d2. Just a complete development, not really think about the attacking ideas too much, and just keep the position calm with the knight d2 move. But instead, in the game, Vaishali doesn't see how else to continue the attack, and she goes for c4, which is a mistake, and it ends up weakening white's position considerably. Here, you can pause the video and try to find why this is a mistake and what black should do as a response to it. I'll drink my tea while you think, as requested. And if you are ready, let's see some solutions. So there's a few things that black can do. A lot of them might be good. For example, knight d4 is definitely the most natural move to calculate, although it is not black's top option. So knight to d4, white will reply with queen c3 and starting to target that long diagonal. So black has to also find a defense against it, bishop to e5. It looks very good for black so far because they have all of these discovered checks ideas. So white is going to have to play king h1, and after rook e8, bishop to b2. It looks a bit odd, but some play for white still exists. That long diagonal might become a problem for black in the future, so it can get complicated. Black is better, but in these complications, anything can happen. So knight d4 keeps things a bit murky. If you chose bishop to g4 instead, this is also a pretty good move. Targeting the queen, it's going to go somewhere like c3. And after rook e8, knight d2, black's position is better and more sound, but still, no huge issues here occur for white. If you said any of these two moves, I would still count them as good. They both make sense and both work. But the absolute best move, which was the one played in the game, was f6. This is best because it keeps the knight d4 ideas, but it also kicks away the knight from a good active position. So now, the problem for white is that knight to e6 doesn't work. It's a very nice square, but black can unfortunately just take it, and after another capture, take on d4 with a fork. So knight to e6 is never an option, and the knight will just have to come back to h3 if the knight ever wants to save itself. So first, she takes on d6, queen takes on d6, and Vaishali here should have retreated with knight to h3, although after bishop takes h3, queen takes, knight d4 just looks like an extra pawn and a very good position for black. So she goes c5 first, and after queen to c7, it's a very simple retreat, and the knight still has no choices, so it has to go to h3 eventually. But white's position starts really falling apart. Knight d4, no problems along the long diagonal as we saw in the other variation, so this is the improved version of taking that pawn. Here she goes queen e3 to also attack this knight as well as this one, but this one doesn't work out tactically for white. If instead she played something like queen c3, this would not have been as great either, because black can simply take and then take that knight on h3, which ended up being a problem in all of these lines. This forces white to take back with the pawn, and the position is still very, very bad, and the king is not safe, not to mention that there's also a pawn, extra pawn for black. So in the game, we saw queen to e3, counterattacking the knight, but black can simply take this after some calculation. Maybe Vaishali miscalculated something here, or maybe she just didn't see it getting this bad when she played her initial c4 move. But after queen to e7, it looks like white is regaining material, but black has a defense with rook to f7, which is very simple, and now both rooks remain under attack, and white will lose material and the game. If the queens get traded, then that knight still stays on c2, and white just cannot save either one of the rooks. So all of this downhill spiral started after c4 by white, after which the position was very loose and the d4 pawn was very weak, which was further worsened with her move c5. It's a very short game, but this teaches us that attack can be deceiving sometimes if your position is not positionally sound. Here we saw that she had some weaknesses and that d4 pawn ended up costing her the whole game. To me, this seems like maybe psychology played a role in this game. Vaishali got an unfamiliar position in the opening and didn't exactly know what to do when black didn't allow her to break through on the king side. I get a feeling she just wasn't as in tune in the position from the first time playing this opening. So we saw Zhongyi, who stayed very solid, precise and tactically alert. She has been very consistent with it in this tournament, showing us another great game, this time with black. All of the other boards made a draw this round. Salimova versus Lei, Kanero versus Lagno, and Muzichuk versus Gorechkina. All of these ended in a draw. But with this win, Zhongyi actually takes the lead in the event with 6 out of 9 points. So great game by her, and Gorechkina and Ting Jie are only half a point behind. So let's see what the next rounds have in store for us. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.